Hey, great Wednesday morning to you all, and welcome to another episode of Frankly Speaking Titans. And oh boy, what a show we have for you. First of all, we want to announce some big breaking news from Frankly Speaking Sports. We are now a proud member. That's right. A proud member of NGSC Sports Network. That's right. We have joined forces with them and we are now a member of NGSC, and we are so very happy and proud to be part of such a successful network. I'm Larry Frank once again, and like I said, what a show we have for you today. We're going to be talking lots and lots of Titans, but we have two terrific interviews with you coming up later in the show. We're going to have Bo Eason, that's right, former Houston Oilers safety. We're going to have on. Oh, baby, we just continue to have great interviews, and it doesn't stop there. We're going to be talking Titans football. That's right. The last preseason game is coming up this Friday versus the New England Patriots, and we have Cory Curtis. That's right, the sports director at WKRN TV Nashville News 2 will be joining us as well. Folks, so much happening, but before we get started, we want to send prayers and thoughts out to Caleb Farley of the Tennessee Titans. If you haven't heard, his home in North Carolina, I guess, had an explosion in it, collapsed, and his father was killed in that blast. And we want to, once again, like I said, send out our best wishes to him and our prayers to him and his family. Just a terrible tragedy. And as we move on to the Tennessee Titans, all I've been saying, folks, how long have you heard me? And it's kind of ironic because later on when you get in the interview with Cory Curtis, we were talking about the kicking situation. And this interview was actually recorded yesterday morning. That's right, Tuesday morning. It was recorded before they even released any of the kickers, before they ended Mike Bagley. So it'll be very interesting, and you'll to see what we had to talk about. But one of the things I mentioned, and I've been mentioning it on the past couple of shows, is I didn't think any of the kickers that were trying out for the Tennessee Titans would make the team. And you know what? They didn't. That's right. Caleb Sudak and Trey Wolf were released yesterday. And what do? They bring in another kicker, Michael Bagley, who just was terrible last year. He was terrible from over 40 yards. He's terrible overall from a career standpoint, over 40 yards. And I can't understand what the thinking is with the Tennessee Titans. It just doesn't make sense. Last year, if I look at last year, Michael Bagley, actually, let's look at Michael Bagley from 40 to 49 yards out. He is 36 of 47 for 76.5%. That's right, folks, from 40 to 49 yards. Then from over 50 yards, he's only 5 of 13. 5 of 13, which was only 38.4% of the field goals he makes are that he makes over 50 yards. It's just terrible. And you have to ask yourself, why do they do this? If you want it in a nutshell, folks, anything over 40 yards that he attempts, he's 41 of 60, only making 68%. 68% over 40 yards. You want that around 80%, folks, but that is terrible. I can't believe this guy is going to be their kicker, and they might just be trying him out. They have to just be trying him out. For what reason? I don't know. But nevertheless, I can't understand why they don't go after a guy like Robbie Gould that's out there. Robbie Gould last year from 40 to 49 yards was 7 of 11, 63.6%, but he was 2 for 2 over 50 yards. So he has the leg that you want to be, to be successful in the NFL. Made 100% last year, but his career, folks, He's 134 of 173 from 40 to 49 yards. That's 77%. Over 50 is 36 of 51 for 70.5%. That's the kicker I want on my team. That is the kicker. Why they're going after some schmo that nobody knows about that hasn't been successful is besides me. I mean, what is wrong with this team when it comes to special teams? We saw last week versus Minnesota. Special teams were atrocious, not just the kicking game, but covering on kicks, covering on punts, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, what do? We bring in somebody who's not good. It's going to really suck when this year someone, or actually some kicker that is no good that we put on this team is causing us to lose games. I know in 3 games we lost last year. I remember the Giants vividly. We losing to them because we can't make a damn field goal. You can't make that, should be an automatic. That's right, an automatic. So I don't know. I cannot believe this guy either will be part of the 53-man roster. But if they do, boy, oh boy, they made it really pray because when it comes to field goal kicking, we're going to be biting our nails, holding our chest, hoping for these kickers to go ahead and make these field goals because right now, folks, it does not look promising. Another thing that doesn't look too promising is our wide receiver core is just getting banged up, and banged up more. For instance, Traylon Burks, now Kylo Phillips with his sprained MCL. He's going to be out 6 weeks, so it's going to be like game 5 or 6. Maybe game 3 if we're lucky, where he's back. So Burks out for a couple games, Phillips out for a couple of games. Tell you what, thank goodness for Chris Moore. Of course, Hopkins, thank goodness we got him. So we're going to be relying on a lot of different people now. Chigaquano, we're going to be relying on because right now, until game 3 or 4, we're not going to have our full offense. So it's going to take a lot. But I'll tell you what, folks, let's go ahead before we get before we get to the Will Levis thing and the Malik Willis. How about our running game? Talk about a trifecta. You talk about, of course, Henry. Everybody knows Derrick Henry. How about Ty J. Spears? He was incredible the other night. And then Julius Chestnut. I wonder how many times I'm going to call him Joey. If you remember, Joey Chestnut is the hot dog eating king. I have a habit for some reason calling Julius Joey, but Julius Chestnut was awesome as well. The other thing both of these guys add to the team is they can return punts and kicks. So they become very, very, very valuable on the special team side. I'll tell you what, I would not be surprised, although some people might disagree with me, if, Hassan Haskins is not even part of this team come opening game. I mean, I really don't see the use of him. Yes, he's on special teams, but how many guys do you need running punts back on your team? You got 2 good ones in Spears and Chestnut. So we'll have to see, but I really don't see any place for this guy, Haskins, but we'll find out soon enough as August 29th, folks, is the day. We call it drop dead day because you have to get the roster down to 53 men. All right, folks, everybody's been wondering. Everybody's been talking. Willis versus Levis. Willis versus Levis. Well, Levis had it, what did they call it? A low body injury, which technically I found out it was his thigh because we saw it being wrapped. But he did not play versus Minnesota. Willis did. And, I don't know what some of these people are watching, but they are not watching the same game I'm watching. I did not think Willis looked good at all as we battle for this backup position. One thing we know is our quarterback is Ryan Tannehill. That is set. But if Ryan goes down, who's going to take over? And I look at this 2 ways, folks. First of all, let's talk about Malik Willis. Malik Willis, he wasn't accurate. Yeah, Aquano missed a couple of balls. I think one was not so much his fault. One was his fault. Malik was not real accurate. He had NWI, he missed with a poor throw that was short. And I just didn't like his accuracy. Now, let me make sure we understand something. He is better than last year, but last year he was terrible. So what we're saying now, folks, is he's better than terrible. Okay, but he still has a way to go. And one of it is his decision making. I'm not a big fan of his decision making. He ran a lot, and that's great. That's fun to watch and stuff like this. But there was a play, and it was on the Minnesota, I think 30 or 20-yard line. We're trying to score, and Malik is scrambling to the right. And on the right, I believe it was Wiley, who was to the right. He was wide open, but instead he ran. And don't get me wrong, Malik got a decent pickup, but if he throws that ball to Wiley, Wiley goes into the end zone, not even touch. So his decision making, I did not like. The big part, it doesn't matter how great Malik does. I don't care if Malik goes out there and threw 7 touchdowns that game. They are all discredited because of the mistakes he makes when it's holding on to the football. He still has issues and he still struggles with that, and that will cost you ball games. Turnovers cost you ball games. We all know that. And it will cost us ball games going forward. So I was not overly impressed. He threw an interception. Like I said, he fumbled the ball. Yes, he got it back. But sooner or later, those ones he'd get back are not going to bounce our way. We all know that. So at the end of the day, Malik's okay. He is better. And let me say this, I'm not against Malik Willis. If Malik Willis ends up a great quarterback, Tennessee has everything to gain with 2 great quarterbacks, Willis and Levis. The thing I like about Levis, folks, is his decision making and his ability to hold on to the football. As long as he is able to hold on to the football and Malik isn't, I'm going to give Levis the nod. Now, look at it this way, too. I've said this many times. A lot of you watch my shows on different networks. I believe a quarterback is first year. It's beneficial for that quarterback to sit and get used to the NFL. I mean, I think Anthony Richardson of the Colts, I think CJ Stroud of the Texans, I think Bryce Young of Carolina, I think they're all going to struggle this year because they don't have that ability to sit on the sideline and gather that knowledge and watch the flow of the game and learn from the sidelines. So I thought about it. Well, what happens in the event that Tannehill gets hurt? Well, Levis is going to be thrown into the Wolves just like Malik was last year. Now, I still say that I prefer Levis over Willis, but if we look at it from the worst scenario, if Willis gets the backup spot over Levis, Levis gets an opportunity to learn. He gets that opportunity to sit on the sidelines, even if Tannehill should get hurt, unless, of course, Willis comes in and cannot do the job. But I'm going to tell all of you Titan fans this right now. I do not care who the backup quarterback is this year behind Tannehill. When it comes to who the future of this team is at quarterback, obviously it's not Ryan Tannehill, but it's definitely Will Levis. Will Levis was taken for a reason. One of those reasons is they didn't have confidence in Malik Willis. Malik Willis, I don't see being anything more than a average backup quarterback. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But at the end of the day, folks, when you look at these two, you got to ask yourself, which one's better? Which one would you rather have? And the answer to me is Will Levis. Well, folks, not sure who we're going to see Friday. Not sure if Tannehill will play. We'll find that out probably tomorrow. But, with the cancellation of the joint practices with the New England Patriots, it took away a lot of things that coaches wanted to see. They were going up, number ones were going against number ones on both sides of the football. And now the opportunity where you can get those reps were eliminated. So will Tannehill play? Will Hopkins play? We don't know. We're going to hopefully find out. But this week, the key is to get us ready, get everyone out of this game healthy. And by the time 2 weeks from Sunday is the regular season versus New Orleans, we want to be ready to go. You know what I believe. You know I think starters should play at least a quarter of this game to at least get not just the confidence, but the continuity you need to have on a football team because none of them have played this preseason. But I think Tannehill and Hopkins is more important playing together, at least a couple passes, than it is for Henry to play in this game. Now, two guys, folks, before we go on to our next segment, that I really want to see make this team, and I think they've been doing great. We mentioned it last week, but once again, they had great games. Was Caleb Murphy, unbelievable, had 2 sacks versus Minnesota. And I'll tell you what, Eric Guerra, I love the guy. I think he's going to be a great player. And there's another reason I think Haskins could be gone because Guerra is another one that can return punts and kicks. So I'm looking forward to see how these two play again this upcoming week. But the main thing is let's get out of this game injury-free and be as healthy as we could be for game 1 of the NFL season. Well, folks, I'll tell you what, like I said, we have a great show for you. We're going to go ahead, have a commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to have the great former Houston Oiler, Bo Eason on. We'll be back right after this.
So anxious about moving Mom into a senior living community. We feel so much better now. Mom is thriving. She's living her own life. We're totally in debt to Phoenix Senior Living because they recognize that when it comes to Mom, everything matters. I can't thank them enough for giving Mom the life we so desperately wanted her to have. She has such a sense of purpose and connection now. Her whole life has changed.
At Phoenix Senior Living, we want to provide more than just a beautiful building. In all my years of working with seniors, I have never once received a letter about how life-changing our beautiful building and decor were. But I have received letter after letter full of gratitude and appreciation for the people who have given their loved ones the love, care, and attention they needed. For every senior in our care, we invest the time and energy getting to know them, their likes, their dislikes, their interests, their needs, because truly knowing each of our residents and their families is crucial to providing excellent care unique to just them. That's our vision, and it's one we'd be honored to share with you and your loved one.
13 Daggers Tattoo Studio is looking for a new tattoo artist. Must be established with a strong portfolio and good work ethic. Stop by today at 13 Daggers across from Patriot Park on Fort Campbell Boulevard. Clarksville's ultimate tattoo studio. Tattoos, touch-ups, and consultations. See the artist's work online at 13daggerstattoo.com and get the custom experience you want with killer ink. Book today and get pricked by a pro. 13 Daggers Tattoo Studio. Rockin' hard on the boulevard.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Frankly Speaking Titans. And what a show we've had so far. One game left, folks. We said this earlier in the show. One preseason game left before the real story begins. And as always, throughout this preseason, we've been having former Houston Oilers greats on with us. And we are proud to announce that we have another one on with us. And we'd like to welcome in to our Frankly Speaking Sports Studio. Let's welcome in former Houston Oilers safety from 1984 to 1987, Bo Eason. Bo, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Larry. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Bo, I want to go back in time, to preseasons that you participated in, whether you were a player trying to make the starting team or whether you were a backup. Talk about that last game. I think back then it was 4 games, actually, not 3. Talk about what you as a player individually wanted to accomplish if they so did play you in that last game. And did you want to play in that last game?
Back in the 80s, Larry, it's so funny. I was telling my son this. We were watching a game and, none of the starters are really in. But back when me and my brother played in the 80s, boy, we played all 4 games. And the fourth game, we played pretty much the whole game. And I remember we were trying to win when I was with the Oilers. I think my fourth year was with Jerry Glanville, and we were trying to build some momentum and trying to win. So the starters, we played all 4 quarters. I remember it was against the Anaheim Rams at that time.
That's right.
Yeah. And, man, it was so different. We weren't like saving anything to, resting up. We weren't worried about injuries. It was more like you had to play.
Yeah, Bo, you raise a great point because I'm a firm believer, and I've said this from the time you played, and I'll say it to the time I'm done watching football, is that I believe starters should play in that last game because exactly what you said. It gives you, if hopefully, if you play well, it gives you momentum and camaraderie with each other. That togetherness to go ahead in game one and right out of the gate, you feel comfortable and ready to play. Because how many times do we see in football teams start out slow game one because they really haven't, become a unit so far from from a role on the field?
Yeah, you're 100% right. I always notice that in the NFL lately, like the first few games are really preseason games. The regular season games really seemingly are preseason games because these guys got to learn to play 4 quarters. So that takes a lot of energy in the NFL because everybody's fast and everybody's big and everybody's athletic. So you need time in the preseason to get that timing and get that conditioning down, that game type conditioning. So you'll see a little sloppiness in the first few games of the regular season. Where when I played, man, you started that first game, you were pretty much good to go. You had played plenty of time with your teammates during training camp to play full speed, for 4 quarters.
Now, let me ask you this. Was there a difference in preparing for the season? A, if you knew you were going to be the starter, or B, if you knew you were going to be maybe strong safety 2 rather than number 1?
Yeah, it's different, but in the NFL, every defensive back has to play because there's just not enough spots on the team, right? So even if you're a backup safety, you're going to be playing nickel and you're going to be playing a lot of special teams. So no one, takes the day off. No one's like, hey, I think I'm a backup. I think I'm going to chill today. That's just not possible because you can't keep enough defensive backs because, they all have to play special teams and they all got to play nickel. So there's no luxury to that. But, when you're going in as a starter, I always preferred that, like I always was competing for the starting job. I knew I had the starting job there for a few years. So, you prepare differently. You rest yourself a little bit differently because you're going to have to play every snap on defense, which takes, a lot of energy. So sometimes you'll not get in on every single tackle. I notice guys do that more today. They more like they pick their moments where they're going to give a hit and not give a hit. Back in the day, if we let up and didn't hit somebody, that was even on the ground with Jerry Glanville, we would get like benched. We get pulled out.
That's
So
right.
it was much different back then.
So let me ask you this, if I'm correct, your brother was Tony Eason, right?
Yes.
Of the New England Patriots.
Yes.
And I lived in Massachusetts at the time he was the quarterback. So I
Yep.
remember Tony real well. Do you think Tony would like to play in today's game rather than get him beat up like he had to do back in the 80s?
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine? I mean, think of the quarterbacks that got drafted in 1983, which was the best draft of a quarterback class there's ever been, with John Elway going first, Todd Blackledge, my brother, Jim Kelly, Kenny O'Brien, who was my roommate at UC Davis, and Dan Marino went last in the
That's
first
right.
round. So 6 guys. in the first round, and one of them was my brother and one was my roommate in college. So think about those guys, all 6'4", 225, and imagine no defensive player can touch them or their receivers, like today's game. So
Right.
those guys would just be like, killing defenses, because look, if you think about it, you think about like, so Tom Brady has this amazing career, right? Like the best quarterback ever to play, but he threw for 50 touchdowns, Larry, twice in like 22 years, twice. Do you know what those years were? His last two. So how does he can't throw for 50 touchdowns until he's like 44 years old, because now they changed the rules so much that
That's
they
right.
can't touch him and they can't touch his receivers. So it's much easier to throw for a lot of touchdowns this day and age, as opposed to when you're getting hit in the face. After, think about this, Larry. The guys in the 80s, John Elway, he could throw a ball. Dan Marino could throw a ball and then get hit in the face by a 300-pounder and no penalty, no nothing, So that makes it a lot more comforting for a quarterback these days, who you can't hit him like that. And another thing, guys like me playing safety, if I hit people like I did in the 80s, I would never finish a game in this day and age, Larry.
Right.
I
That's
would be
right.
playing for free. They would find me and they'd kick me out of every game. And that goes for Ronnie Lott and Jack Tatum and Doug Plank, all those great safeties in the 70s and 80s. Those guys would have never finished a game if they had the rules they have today.
Yeah, and that raises me the question as a defensive guy. I was watching, and it's only a preseason game. I was watching the Titans, and one of the guys from the Titans, they accidentally, and you could see his arm came across. It wasn't an intentional hit to the head, but it was just a browse of the helmet, and they call a penalty. Don't you? And I know you probably agree with me. Shouldn't it be the intent, whether it was to hit or not to hit, that matters when they're trying to protect these players?
Oh yeah, the referees. Here's the problem with them is they just don't get the defense, what the position that the defensive player is in. Their job, I think, is to protect, the pretty boy who's playing quarterback, which, that's fine. But if your intent isn't to hurt them, but you accidentally are sprinting full speed, and you're supposed to be able to now move your head and detach it from your shoulders and put it over here, you know what I mean? It's like, physiologically, it's impossible to stop yourself and to get your head out of the way. I don't know how these guys do it. They are so, you know what, these defensive players, I give them a lot of credit. They're pretty darn good at not getting
Yeah.
penalized. But, I wish the referees would just understand the physics of what it takes to play defense and give them a break now and again, especially when it's a big play in a big game.
Right. Now let me ask you this, Mo. Do you think it betters the chance for a defensive player to actually hurt himself if he tries to let up than go through with it? Because they're asking you to stop, and you're going fast, 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 and stop. I mean, but that's where the legs start. You try to hold up, you get the hammies, you get the Achilles. Isn't there, from a defensive standpoint, a lot more opportunity to get hurt that way?
Oh, I always wonder that when I watch the NFL today. I'm like, gosh, how do they run full speed and then, turn down the hit, like have to move their body and stop their body? It's like these guys must have a great braking system in this day and age, like we didn't have. We just kept running and you hit the quarterback or you hit the running back. I remember, Larry, so funny that, you know, playing against great running backs like an Earl Campbell, or Eric Dickerson or Barry, or Barry Sanders. When you're playing against those guys, man, they are tough and they are hard to bring down. So when you're running full speed to try to hit them, to bring them down, and then all of a sudden they say you got to stop in midair. I don't know how they do it.
No, I'm with you. We're talking about Eason, former Houston Oilers safety from 84 to 87. The first 3 years you played, they weren't very, very good teams, the Houston Oilers. Then you get injured, unfortunately. I think you broke your ankle or something with the ankle.
Mhm.
And 1987, you didn't play as much. I don't know, that was injury related, but I will assume it was. But the team started playing real well. My
Mhm.
question to you is, how fulfilling was it to see a team that struggled the first 3 years finally, put it all together under Jerry Glanville and get to the playoffs, which you did have an opportunity to participate in?
Yeah, I mean, that's really exciting for a player. Like when I got drafted there, the Oilers had the second pick in the draft, right? So that's how, yeah, I got there. Um, and so that means they weren't very good before that in 83 and before that. So, it took us a while to build the team, to get the right personnel. And then when we changed the offense to that run and shoot, remember that?
As I sure do.
With Warren Moon, that's when it really escalated. So we started going no huddle, run and shoot, and really started scoring with the ball. And then our defense got really solid in 87, 88. And it was really fun to watch that turnaround, because I remember, Larry, like in high school, I think I lost 2 games in high school, 4 years. And then I think my last 3 years of college, I think I lost 2 games. Well, my rookie year with the Oilers, so I had lost 4 games in the past like 8 years. So my rookie year with the Oilers, we lost our first 10 games. I didn't know how to lose. I was in the huddle like going crazy, like, what is happening, you guys? What are we doing? And we lost 10 in a row. And at the end of my rookie season, we won 3 out of our last 5 or 6 games. And so that was when that was the genesis of that whole turnaround that happened in 85 and 86 and 87. And then, from that point on, we were knocking on the door to the Super Bowl pretty much
Right.
every year, and just not being able to get there.
Oh, what was it like playing in the Astrodome?
Oh man, it was exciting. It was because I grew up in California, and so I would watch the Oilers in the Love You Blue era. I would watch Earl Campbell just look like the most impossible dude to ever get on the ground. And I just remember all those flags and all of those pom poms that everyone in the crowd would shake back and forth when I was in high school and college. And I always thought, man, if I play safety in the NFL, I do not want to tackle this dude, or Earl Campbell. And and I think God had a plan for me. So I got drafted to the Houston Oilers, so I didn't have to tackle Earl Campbell other than in practice, right? So it was just funny how it all worked out. Um,
Yeah, lucky for you. I hear you. So
yeah.
let me ask you just one more question related to football. Um, Talk about the character of Jerry Glanville.
Yeah. He was, he is a madman, right? He is completely, you know, I haven't talked to him for years or seen him for years, but I don't even know how he's doing. Is he still doing good?
I haven't heard anything.
Oh, okay. Um, he was, crazy, and he loved to just blitz every down. Well, that's fine. But in the NFL, if eventually they figure out what you want to do, and then they beat you with your, what your strength is. And that seemed to happen to us. Anyway, he was, you know, he was fun to play because I was a defensive back and I was an aggressive one. So we got along, pretty good. Um, but he, he's not the easiest guy to play for, that's for sure. And was more about, like there was a lot of side stuff going on too. Like there was, tickets for Elvis and change. I remember when he went.
I remember.
Remember
Yeah.
that? And remember when he went to Atlanta, he just changes Atlanta's colors to black. Remember the Falcons were red and gray, and he just changes their uniform to black. So there's a lot of distractions and things going on off the field with a guy with that kind of personality. But I actually had a fun time playing for him just because of the blitzing and the aggressive play of the defense. So, it wasn't boring, that's for sure.
So after football, you get into acting. I mean, when did you decide? I mean, did you know while you were playing football that you wanted to be an actor, or how did that all come about?
Yeah, I always was interested in that. I always would go to in high school and in college, I would go to the theater shows that they would put on from the schools. And I just couldn't believe how people could be up there on stage and hold people's attention and play these characters. Anyway, I was really interested in it, but I never told anybody, obviously. In those days, you just didn't tell your teammates that you were interested in being a theater actor.
I remember, buddy. I remember.
Yeah. And so when I got done, when I finished after 5 years in the NFL, I moved to New York City. I got in every class I could possibly get in, acting and movement and improv and voice. I used all that energy I did to play in the NFL. I just translated it right into acting and writing, and wrote a play, and it became a hit in New York, and
Right.
got bought as a movie, and so it was really fun for me to be able to express myself like I did on a football field, but on a stage. Those two, being an elite athlete and being a good stage performer, there's a lot of similarities that people don't really understand there, because it's all performance based and it's all physical. Like, you got to be really physical, and you got to be able to show up and train and rehearse probably the same way. And so it's been a really fun transition.
So and then now, if I remember correctly, you're now a motivational speaker, a life coach, I believe.
Yeah.
What made you decide, okay, now it's time for me to give back and motivate other people to be successful in their careers?
Yeah, it was funny how that all happened, Larry, because I was doing the show in New York, and what would happen after the show was we would get a knock on my dressing room door. And it was never like fans of the show. It was always like CEOs of companies or Wall Street people, and all kinds of business people would come and knock on my dressing room door, and they would ask me and my wife, "Hey, could you guys bring this play to my company?" And we were like, "Well, no, this is a Broadway show. We don't take this to companies." And they go, "No, we want you to bring it to our company to teach people what you're able to do on stage, because we feel like if our sales force or our executive leadership team can learn how to speak and be on stage like you do, then our business would really grow." So we started to do that, Larry, just with baby steps at first. This was many years ago. And we found out that these companies did start to grow. And then we found out that they wanted my wife and I, to train their people to do what I did in the play on stage, which was tell a story to an audience. So that has just evolved over the last several years, where I go in and I speak to people, and then I train their people how to tell a story. And they're finding that's really growing their personal brands, and it's growing their corporate brand. So that's what my wife and I do. We go around and we help people do that. And now we have our own events, Larry, where people come to us in a theater and we train them how to tell their story, how to grow their business. And that's what we've been able to do. And it's been a really fun. I never, Larry, if you would have asked me back in the Oiler days, if I would have been, training people on a stage how to do this, I would have said you were crazy. But I actually am pretty good at it, and we're having a lot of success at it.
Last two questions. The first one is I'm going to put up here if you want to tell people how they can do it. Tell us real quickly about your book. There it is. There's no plan B for your A game. You wrote a book, so not only did you bring it to theater and bring it to businesses, you wrote it too, and you published it to try to help people as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, a bunch of clients just kept coming to me saying, "Hey, you should write a book with the stuff that you talk about." And so I did. I mean, we went to New York, we pitched it to, all of the publishers, and they all wanted it. And so I wrote it, and I'd never written a book before. So it was hard, but it was really, it became an 8-time bestseller. So it really was successful, and it was fun. It was great. And that's what I just keep kind of doing with my life. I just look at, wow, what is the next place for me? Is it is it being a playwright? Is it being a stage performer? Is it being a motivational speaker? Is it being an author for books? And so I'm thinking right now, Larry, what's the next step for me? Like, what am I going to do?
Whatever it is, I know you're going to be successful. Last question, and I will let you run. And I've asked all the former Houston Oilers this question that come on. Talk about the day you heard that the Houston Oilers were moving to Tennessee. How disappointed, if at all, were you when you found out about that?
Yeah, it was disappointing, because the one thing you have as an ex-NFL player is you're an alumni. Like, you can always go back, and you can always, be involved, and that's your colors and that's your team. And when they moved, I was like, oh my gosh, we don't have any place to go back to. That way, we don't have that connective tissue anymore to Houston. And like, when I moved to Houston, I was 21 years old, and I was single. I'd never left California before. I loved being in Houston, and I loved those Oiler teams and the guys who played. So I missed that. But, here recently, with, them going back to the throwback uniforms, I think that's going to be really cool. And, they're involving us a lot more now in the, reunions and coming back to Nashville. So it's a lot better. But at first I was like bummed out. I was like, gosh, I got no place to go. I don't have a team, but now I feel like, oh, okay, if they're going to wear the uniforms and they're going to invite us back, that'll be cool.
Yeah, and it's going to be real cool. I know they're doing it twice this year as far as wearing the uniforms. I think one of the games they are inviting the players back. Well, listen, Bo, I could talk to you all day, but I know you got a lot of things you got to get done. But I want to take the time to thank you very, very much to join us on Frankly Speaking Titans today.
Yeah, you're welcome, Larry. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, and stay safe over there.
Will do.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was the great Bo Eason, former Houston Oiler safety from 1984 to 1987. Let's go ahead. Let's take a break. We'll be back right after this.
So anxious about moving Mom into a senior living community. We feel so much better now. Mom is thriving. She's living her own life. We're totally in debt to Phoenix Senior Living because they recognize that when it comes to Mom, everything matters. I can't thank them enough for giving Mom the life we so desperately wanted her to have. She has such a sense of purpose and connection now. Her whole life has changed.
At Phoenix Senior Living, we want to provide more than just a beautiful building. In all my years of working with seniors, I have never once received a letter about how life-changing our beautiful building and decor were. But I have received letter after letter full of gratitude and appreciation for the people who have given their loved ones the love, care, and attention they needed. For every senior in our care, we invest the time and energy getting to know them, their likes, their dislikes, their interests, their needs, because truly knowing each of our residents and their families is crucial to providing excellent care unique to just them. That's our vision, and it's one we'd be honored to share with you and your loved one.
13 Daggers Tattoo Studio is looking for a new tattoo artist. Must be established with a strong portfolio and good work ethic. Stop by today at 13 Daggers across from Patriot Park on Fort Campbell Boulevard. Clarksville's ultimate tattoo studio. Tattoos, touch-ups, and consultations. See the artist's work online at 13daggerstattoo.com and get the custom experience you want with killer ink. Book today and get pricked by a pro. 13 Daggers Tattoo Studio. Rockin' hard on the boulevard.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Frankly Speaking Sports, now streaming on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Twitch, besides all of our other platforms. Oh, baby, what a great interview we just had with Bo Eason, former Houston Oiler. Terrific. He really brought it to us today. And I'll tell you what, folks, now we're going to talk about the Tennessee Titans and what's going on with them. From last week's game, we'll preview, and we'll actually go ahead and preview this game coming up versus New England. Let's go ahead and bring in Sports Director at WKRN TV, Nashville News 2. Let's bring in Cory Curtis. Cory, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. Cory, let me get right to this. This week, you know, they say preparation and planning is a big part of any success, not just of any football team, but any organization that's out there. How much does the cancellation of the joint practices between the New England Patriots and the Tennessee Titans actually affect Mike Vrabel's team from a preparation standpoint? And might this just go ahead and have him play players this week in Friday's game that he may not have played originally?
Well, I think it's a big deal because this is the time. These joint practices have replaced the preseason games for the starters. You know, when we talked to Coach Vrabel about what happened in Minnesota, you know, he said that the backups didn't get a lot of reps in practice. It was almost all the starters against their starters. It was that time for them to step up the competition and see what they can do and get ready for the regular season. And so you were going to have 2 more days of that with the New England Patriots. And you would have seen the offensive line again, I think, in that third game. But I don't know how many other starters you would have seen. But I think you're absolutely right. I think we're going to see quite a few starters. I still think they're going to be afraid of injuries. And why wouldn't you be after 180 players over the last 2 years? But I think that a lot of these guys need to play. Harold Landry didn't play a snap last year. And so, you know, he's a guy who's going to need to play. Now, Jeff Simmons, Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, I think they could all be on the bench. I would think in a new offense, you might want Tannehill to take some snaps, but we'll see on that. But I would think for the most part, you know, DeAndre Hopkins probably be another guy who could sit this one out. But I think that they're going to want a lot of these guys to get some time.
You know, the big story of the preseason has been the battle between Malik Willis, Will Levis. Obviously, Levis didn't play last week with a thigh injury. If Levis should play this week, and I think he will, I mean, do you think Vrabel already has his mindset on who that backup is? Or do you think Levis still has a chance if he comes out and has a good performance this week?
I think that the backup quarterback situation will be a flowing situation. You know, Malik has more experience. I mean, he was here last year. He got a few starts. Obviously, regardless of how it went, he got a few starts. And obviously, he's gotten quite a bit better from where he was a week ago. And a lot of that position is trust. And who do you trust to run the operation? And when you hear Coach Vrabel talk about Malik and where he's improved, it's command of the operation. That's another big part of it. Now, just because Malik might start the season as the number 2 doesn't mean in week 4 or week 6 or week 8 that he could get passed up by Will Levis when they feel like in practice these guys are coming along. And, I'm guessing at this point from what we've seen that Malik would be that guy right now. But, we'll see what Will's got on Friday night. And, maybe he does something where we're like, wow, he's really got to be the guy. The one thing for Will is I would love to have seen him gotten a series with the starting offensive line. And that's something that he did not get. And so, look, I expect him to play 2. I expect them to alternate drives like they did in Chicago or alternate halves. So we'll see. But I'd like to get to see him with a higher end of the roster.
Now, I think the biggest issue and pretty much the biggest question mark during preseason, at least in my opinion, has been special teams, mainly the kickers. You got Sudek, you got Wolf. Do we see either of them make the 53-man roster? Or could we possibly go after a kicker on a free agent like Robbie Gould is still sitting out there? No one's picked him up. What are your thoughts on the kicking situation?
Yeah, I think Michael Badgley just got released too. So there are some veterans out there. Look, Caleb Shudak is a guy who I thought was going to win the job last year before he hurt his right quad kicking in practice. Every one of his kicks looks the same, and that's like a really big key to be a kicker is you want to have that same rotation, that same ball flight, that same ball strike every time. Trey Wolf still doesn't have that. So I think Trey Wolf, to me, the guy's got a monstrous leg. He's got a cannon, but there's just not enough consistency to perform at this level, to me, for Trey Wolf. So if one of the two gets the job, it's going to be Caleb Shudak, in my opinion. And then they have to make the decision is, would we rather go with somebody that we don't know? The great thing about this, Frank, is you don't have to stick with that decision. Okay. I mean,
that's right.
I mean, you could start the season with Shudak and 2 or 3 games in. Guess what? Robbie Gould, Michael Badgley, they're probably still going to be out there. So you could let it ride for a few weeks to see, if the young man is up to the job. The other thing is you could sign one of those guys, and guess what? Caleb Shudak will probably still be out there or on your practice squad, and you could bring him back after a few weeks. The one thing about bringing in a veteran is if you do it after week 1, his full contract isn't guaranteed. Okay. So they may wait until after the Saints game to bring in a Robbie Gould or a Michael Badgley, because that way they don't have to guarantee that full year salary.
It makes 100% sense. So, what we thought, our wide receiver core, it's banged up. Traylon Burks still, we're hearing that he could be ready for game 1, maybe not. Now it's Kyle Phillips. Do we go to the next man up, or do they have to go out? Not that there's a lot out there either, but do we seek, like I just said, a free agent as a kicker? Do we look for one that might be available or waived during the next week or so?
Well, it depends on who's out there. There's talk that Corey Davis could be a surprise cut with the New York Jets, and depending on what he would cost, Corey Davis is good for this football team. Okay. I know he never lived up to the number 5 overall pick. I don't care. He helped this team win games. All right. He was good. He was a good blocker downfield. His last year with this team, he had 4 or 5 100-yard games. He was a big reason why they won football games. I know he still had some injury issues in New York as well. So I get the apprehension there. If you could get him on a reasonable deal, though, he could be somebody who could come in and help your football team immediately, in my estimation. The good news is that Chris Moore has been better than expected. I didn't think much of the signing when it happened. When I went out and actually watched him practice, I watched him practice for 10 minutes, and I said, this guy's a pro. Just the way he does things, he's a pro. I think he can help them. Does that mean I think he's necessarily a starter? No. But it doesn't mean I'm afraid to put him on the field? No. I'm not afraid to put him on the field. They are thin. There's no question about that. They've got Hopkins. They've got Chris Moore, NWI, and then whoever they decide to go with kind of after that. I saw Traylon in Minnesota. He does not look like he's in bad shape. All he had on his leg was a sleeve and a very minor limp, and he did not seem to be in bad spirits. So I expect him to have a reasonable expectation to start in week 1, but that doesn't mean you can't have another good player. So I think they're going to roll the dice with what they got. But I would be intrigued if Corey Davis did shake free.
Yeah, and I would love that pickup as well. It's hard to say that the Titans running back position got better because you had the best in Derrick Henry, but what an impression Tyjae Spears, Joey Chestnut. I want to ask you,
Joey's the eater. Julius is the runner.
Incredible, isn't he? And I'll tell you what, but talk also about this. I think those guys pretty much have said goodbye to Haskins.
Well, I think you're putting the cart a little bit before the horse there, because Hassan Haskins has been a core special teams player since the team drafted him last year. And really, when they drafted him, that was the idea. So I think there's potential for all 4 of them to make the football team. But Julius Chestnut has certainly shown he can carry the football, and the team loves the way he practices. The big problem here is when you're looking at building a 53, all right, and you're saying, Julius Chestnut, we really like him. He carries the ball, and he runs hard. He gets low. He finishes drives, blah, 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 blah. How many carries is he going to get a game? 0.
Right.
Because who are you going to give the ball? Derrick Henry, Tyjae Spears, or Julius Chestnut? He's third in that line. He only gets the ball if one of those guys is hurt, or if you're just trying to run out the clock in a game where you're up by 3 touchdowns. Otherwise, you're giving it to Henry or to Spears. And so that's why special teams is so important. Like I said, I think there's definitely the possibility he gets on the team. I think there's definitely the possibility he beats out Haskins, but I wouldn't write that check yet, okay? Because Haskins is a core special teams player for this team.
And what do you think? I mean, just from your showing, obviously it's hard not to be impressed, but what are your thoughts on Tyjae Spears, what you've seen so far during preseason?
When we started looking into the draft and his name started coming up and I started watching some of his film, I was like, wow, he's got juice. And the thing I love about Spears is he is instant acceleration. Derrick Henry needs a couple of steps to get up to full speed. Tyjae Spears hurdled a tackler and was at full speed when he landed. And that's pretty incredible. And so you see that explosiveness. They wanted this with Darrington Evans. Remember, they used a 3rd-round pick on him, and it was a total whiff because he was just never healthy. And then last year they brought in Dontrell Hilliard, and Hilliard can run. I mean, he's fast, and he actually tied for the team lead with 4 touchdown catches last year. And I think he was with the team the year before as well, when Henry went down, and it was him and Deontay Foreman, and they put together 200-yard rushing games, together. He had that speed element. And so now they've got a younger guy who's got this speed element, who's got this explosiveness, and who's got some natural pass receiving skills. What we have not seen in the preseason is them lining him up out in the slot or out wide, trying to match him up with a linebacker or a safety, and trying to take advantage of some of those things in the passing game. And I think you're going to see a lot of it in the regular season.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Are you a little bit more at ease now that you've seen the offensive line a couple of different series? Or are you still skeptical of what we might see during the regular season?
I will carry a degree of skepticism until I see them, deliver it for a few games. I know this. Peter Skoronski is the real deal. Okay. He is the real deal. He is an improvement. I think Aaron Brewer is going to be fine at center. Yes, he's a little light, but I think he's going to be fine. Brunskill is okay. I think Nate Davis was inconsistent at times for the Titans, so I don't know. I'll call that position a wash. The fact that Andre Dillard has a heartbeat and 2 functioning feet tells me he's better than Dennis Staley was at left tackle. Okay, so the left tackle position, while it may not be at a Pro Bowl level, while it may not be top half of the NFL, is going to be better than it was last year. Okay, there's not much question about that. Right tackle, I've got some concerns. I like Chris Hubbard. He seems like a pro. I've talked to him a couple times. He's been there for every day of practice. He got whipped a couple times in Minnesota in pass protection. I mean, whipped. And so that is a concern. So we'll have to see how he holds up. I don't think Jalen Duncan is ready yet. Justin Murray is another backup who they recently brought in and gave him some good snaps up in Minnesota. So the right tackle spot, I've got questions about. I think the other four are going to be okay. Not great.
Oh, that's
okay.
Okay. Hey, two guys that have really impressed me, both on the defensive side of the ball, and I want to get your take on whether you think they'll make the 53-man roster, has been Eric
Caleb
Garrett.
Murphy and Eric Garrett.
That's it. Those are you knew that already. And I'll tell you what, Murphy was a sack machine where he came from, but a lot of people say, it's not a big school, this or that. I'll tell you what, I see him near the quarterback all the time during preseason. Do these two, in your opinion, of course, we won't know till August 29th, but do you think those two are on the 53-man roster when it's put out?
I think Garrett is, for sure. Garrett's open field tackling. He's got kick return and punt return ability, which is important as well on special teams. And look, as far as Murphy goes, he just doesn't have sacks. He hasn't stumbled upon these sacks. When you see it was his first or second sack, one of his 2 sacks in Minnesota, he put out a vicious spin move back to the inside. Yes. And I mean, it was nice. And you don't get 25 and a half sacks in one season at any level without having some kind of ability to get to the quarterback. And there are very few abilities in the NFL that make you special. And that's one of them, the ability to hit the quarterback. If they let him go, he will not be on the practice squad. Somebody else is going to scoop him up. Does that mean I don't know that he's ready to be a steady contributor yet. I don't know, but I do know this. He's worth having on the team. He's worth developing and having to go after the quarterback. I think he could use some time in the weight room and more time with this coaching level and this competition level. But, there's that old saying, Frank, you want him with you or do you want him against you? 3 years from now, I don't want him against me. I want him with me. And so for me, I'm leaning that Murphy makes the team, and I think Garrett's on the team.
All right, last couple questions. I know you got to get out of here.
Yep.
First of all, this coming up weekend, Friday, actually, I should say, last preseason game. What are you looking for, Corey, in this last game from the Tennessee Titans?
Same thing I looked for the first 2 games. I want to see the offensive line. I want to see them string plays together, and I want to see them not have negative plays. They didn't have any negative plays in Chicago from the first unit. And then in Minnesota, like I said, they got beat in pass protection a few times, and Malik, had some work to do on his own. How do they stand up against the Patriots? That's the number one thing that I want to see. The other thing I want to see is I want to see one of these young receivers step up. It was a huge opportunity last week for Reggie Roberson and for Trayshawn Harrison and for 84 Holmes, the kid from Baylor. And they didn't do anything. The only receiver who did anything was Mason Kinsey. Okay. Can anybody step up in this football game and challenge to be a 6th wide receiver on this team? That's what remains to be seen, because I'm waiting for someone to unseat Racey McMath because I think Racey's had his chance, but I don't know that anybody's done it. I mean, Kinsey's come the closest to stepping up and saying, you guys want to get rid of me, but you just can't.
Last question, AFC South. Everybody's talking about Jacksonville this, Jacksonville that. Is this team, do you think, and I'm not asking for records at all because I don't believe in asking people for records. Too many things can happen. I just care whether you think they have enough to overtake Jacksonville, or do you think Jacksonville is the cream of the crop in the AFC South?
I think the Titans' defensive front 7 puts them in every game they play. And if that group stays healthy, I think they will absolutely contend to win the AFC South. I have absolute certainty about that. It's the most underrated unit in the entire National Football League. Okay, Jeffrey Simmons, Tierre Tart, Danico Autry, Harold Landry, Arden Key is a wrecking ball up front. And they're going to be a nightmare for a lot of teams this year. I'm not saying it because I cover the Titans. I'm saying it because I watch the Titans, and I know what those guys can do. Go ask the Minnesota Vikings what they think of the Titans front seven. They made life a living hell for their offense for 2 days, okay? That's the way it's going to be all season. So they're going to give them a chance. I said it at the beginning of the broadcast before the game. This offensive line is going to determine just how far this team goes.
All right, my friend. Well, listen, I know you got a busy day ahead of you. Want to thank you so much taking time out of your busy schedule to join us on Frankly Speaking Titans today.
All right, you guys have a great day. Thanks for having me.
All right, be safe. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was the great Cory Curtis, sports director at WKRN TV Nashville News 2. Oh, what a show it's been, folks. What a great, great show. And guess what? We'll be back next week. We're going to try to do an AFC South prediction show for you on Frankly Speaking Titans since we have a bye week. And then it's real, baby, versus New Orleans. That's right. 2 weeks from this Sunday is opening day. We'll be on the road in New Orleans. We're going to have a lot leading up to that. On behalf of all of us here on Frankly Speaking Sports, want to thank you all for tuning in, and we'll be back again next weekend. Same time, same place. I should say next week. And love to have you join us. Please, folks, remember, we are doing special clips on YouTube, on TikTok. Please make sure to join or follow us or subscribe, whatever the heck they make you do. I think YouTube is subscribe, TikTok is follow, but you get the point. Go ahead and do that so you can get some exclusive clips during the week that may not be on Twitter, may not be on Facebook. It's all free. That's right, it's free. Let your friends know. Let your family know. Hey, I don't care. Let your dogs know. We'll be back next week. Same time, same place. I'm Larry Frank, Frankly Speaking Titans.